zu Standortdaten, Überwachung, Stalking und
Hello and welcome to the English translation of Location Data, Surveillance, Stalking and BLE-Trackers by Leorain, live from the WICMP11. We appreciate your feedback. Please use the hashtag #C3Lingo. Your translators for this talk are Clarifil, Teru and 42 Triangles.
Überwachung. Das Ganze bringt uns Lea. Lea ist Sicherheitsforscherin, kommt aus der Binary Kitchen in Regensburg und ist ein selbsternannter Pinguin. Ich wünsche euch viel Spaß.
Dankeschön und danke, dass ihr da seid.
Thank you for being here.
Der Talk ist 30 Minuten
This talk is for 30 minutes. I have 41 slides. If there's translation people, I am very sorry for this.
Ist mir auch zu sagen,
It's very important to say in this presentation it's going to there's going to be stuff about gendered violence, etc., stalking. If this is a triggering thing for you, please do just leave the room. That's completely okay. If you watch this video, it's completely fine to pause this video, to just stop watching it, to talk to someone, etc. Okay, and with this we start. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction about location data and such, the misuse of it, about Bluetooth trackers, the more specific topic, and then this all is the result of when this was a longer version that I held in a hackspace, which was focused on Bluetooth trackers. I'm going to talk about stalking and digital violence about trackers, and then a little bit of a conclusion. Okay, the introduction. I have held many different versions of this presentation before. The first version was when I was started in this in my master's thesis at some point. That was at the GPN. Ich weiß, wo dein Haus wohnt. I know where your house lives. And I talked about like the basics of Bluetooth energy trackers, etc. I went much more into details about the different networks and how they work. So if there's any interesting about specific details, just look at that one. At the MRMCD, I held a talk, Detect Me If You Can. That was more about detecting Bluetooth trackers much more easily with a home-built prototype based on an ESP32. And I'm going to explain some stuff about that. You can also look at this. Parts of this we are also going to hear here, especially about the easy detection. But I'm not going to go into this too in depth in this one because I've already made that presentation. Okay, so who am I? Hi, I'm Lea. One or the other person might have already seen me here on the YCMP. I'm otherwise in the Binary Kitchen Regensburg. As already said, I'm a caffeine-addicted penguin, so I've already consumed a lot of caffeine to be able to hold this talk to begin with. Otherwise, I am very much an IT person, your friendly neighborhood hacker, both in private and in my employment, and I really love free software. So that's all about me. We're going to talk a little bit about location data. Let's look at data about location, in this case of people or items that they carry, like smartphones, etc. But also AirPods, for example, by now, as devices that now actually are participating in these networks. And the locating of such devices works via GPS and the internet for the location data we're going to talk about today. Except for Bluetooth trackers, those work indirectly over GPS via the devices they communicate with, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So we're talking about both the live location detection, and so where's the person right now, and where were they historically. Yeah. Usually, those location data is in the hands of big corporations through different services on smartphones. You know, who doesn't know it? You're going to download an Android app. It wants some permissions, in this case, location data. And even if this app isn't, it doesn't immediately have the ability to get location data. Wi-Fi networks are going to give you a lot of information as well. So in one way or another, your location is always easily known for different applications. So that's sadly one of those things where we are pretty much easy to surveil. Government agencies are also very interested in allocation data, but also parents, employers, or even your own partners may be interested in where you've been. With location data, you can also do create profiles of people, not just the direct surveillance of where you are, but also associated actions like work, hobbies, etc. Which social connections do you have? Based on that, your daily routines, like when are you at home, when do you leave your house, when do you come back, when do you sleep, when are you awake, stuff like where do you work, or where do you spend your free time. So you can read a lot based on that. What's also in there is doctor's visits and other medical appointments, what's close to you, is there a psychological therapy place or something? Are you going to places you haven't really been at before? Are you close to other people that you usually didn't visit or were new to? It's a lot about your own data sovereignty. So where is your data? And that's also a little bit of the results of the presentation I held at the Hackspace, where we had a little bit of a workshop topic, where we philosophized a lot about where exactly is all my location data. And it's surprisingly easy to track people, even independent of Bluetooth trackers. So there's a lot of unique identifiers on different devices, and is that enough to figure out where you are? And that's the creativity you can use in different networks, and it's super difficult to really make sure that doesn't happen. So this is much more of an awareness presentation, so with a little bit of technical things in there as well. But it is still very shocking, and I just wanted to talk about this. There's multiple puzzle pieces that can be all put together into a big location profile based on the service. An example is you start your day at home, so you know where a person lives. I'm going to work in a specific train at a specific time. Based on that, you can figure out when do you work, when are you at home. Based on that, you can figure out which tickets does that person use. For example, in which train are they usually which train are they usually using? Like, do they have a Deutschland ticket or a D ticket? And you can figure out just generally the ability to the ability which trains to take, etc. Do they change from train to car, etc. Okay, that's also possible to find out from other data, but you can figure out, has something changed about the things that person does? Like, do they have started a family and that's why they now have a car? Stuff like that. And that is possible to potentially detect on the location data. Where and also stuff, where do you work, when do you work, etc. You can also figure out based on the lunch break, you're going to a canteen or something, you can figure out when do they do their lunch break. I have a specific time of day when it's happening. I know where they're going. I know where they are. I know, oh, they're currently in the company. Okay, they're currently somewhere external. They're currently meeting with someone in their lunch break. But also evening activities, like where are they going? Are they into a hack space? How do they spend their free time? Based on that, I can also figure out possible
Abweichungen können sowas sein wie neuer Standort zum Tagesstart.
Possible differences, like they're going somewhere else and they're spending the night there. It could be a new relationship. Starting work earlier and potentially even leaving later, they might have some stress at the job, or maybe they have a new social relation in a work context. Are they going to a new place to do sports, or did they stop to do that? There is health-relevant information that a health insurance might be interested in, but also business trips, for example, like where are customers is something you can figure out based on that. You can also figure out, okay, does that person now have a new medical problem? If they're going to a new doctor or to a new therapist, are they going to different counseling services? Are they maybe at the anonymous alcoholics, etc.? Then there's also stuff like abortion, addiction stuff, domestic violence, etc. And that's very sensible data if a person is going there or not. And that's stuff that you can figure out based on that location data. You can also figure out stuff like hospital stays, police, going to sex workers, etc. That's all stuff that you can figure out based on location data. Based on that, it's very, very sensitive data. A different way to attack it is also, for example, data brokering. Government agencies might be interested if people are under general suspicion. Employers might be interested, or your own partners, as we're going to talk about a little bit more later. And it may be really difficult if a person is in an abusive relationship. It might be really difficult for them to actually seek help with that. Regarding data brokerage, there's a systematic sale of such data. In the more harmless case, quote unquote, it's not that harmless really, using it for marketing reasons to just get profit with targeted advertisement. It can also be possible to potentially identify specific people in a big data set, even if it is anonymized, in this case, for example, by one family homes, etc. And that is, of course, the beginning of big issues with privacy. 1984 is the dystopia to mention here, but also it might be interested for law enforcement or intelligence agencies, both domestic and abroad. It might also be interesting to figure out data about employees from the military or the defense industry. Where are they going? And with that, you can end up leaking sensitive information. And that's also, of course, potentially an issue for the security of the whole country. For employers, it's also a thing where, like, they might use it to for performance reviews, etc. They might figure out that you have some medical issues. Do you have an unhealthy lifestyle? Stuff like that. It is a bit dystopian, definitely, what you can do with this data. Potential pregnancies. With partners, there is also a legitimate reason to and pragmatic reason to share location information. In my case, I like to share my location with my parents if I'm out and about somewhere and I'm not 100% feeling safe. So I can just give them the information for some limited amount of time. That's a bit ironic because ultimately we're giving those people information about where we are who might actually become much more of a problem for us there, who are much more at risk to be an issue for us because they are already close to us. And it can be a little bit weird to share my location with someone who statistically has a much higher risk to abuse that kind of information. But as I've already said, there's a lot of legitimate reasons to share it. And based on that, it can be done out of security considerations. What can also happen is, if I share it once, but always, that it, which can also be completely legitimate, the boundaries can be pushed successively, and why that's a problem if I permanently share my location with someone. I'm also going to talk about that a little bit more later as well, and that's also a possibility for stalking. There's a lot of possibilities that can work, but yeah. New partners, their partners could also become aware of new social relations. They could figure out where I'm going, like specific places like doctors, some sort of social services, etc.
Selbige Interessen wie in den vorherigen Fällen teilweise auch schon. Generell gibt es so eine menschliche Reaktion auf Überwachung.
In general, there's a human reaction to surveillance or just assumption of stalking. In general, for surveillance, not only for location surveillance, but in general, if people assume that they might be under surveillance, especially under CCTV or similar things, there will be a stronger conformance to social norms and suppression of some patterns of behavior. In case of digital stalking, victims often change their location, change their routines, stop going to certain places, stop being as spontaneous in their planning, and start being more strategic in where they're going. Here I want to mention that if we want to share our location, maybe even permanently, then we might run into issues of shifting boundaries. That's definitely not in all cases, just a small percentage, but there again we are quickly at this assumption of surveillance, and that might lead to being less free in our planning, starting to avoid certain people, maybe starting to avoid doing certain things, and that quickly goes towards social isolation. Of course, there's also worsening of the entire mental state. That also leads to less social interaction than you maybe want, and that again leads to shifting boundaries in a relationship. So how does something like this happen? It can start with a previously voluntary sharing of data. It can also happen that different apps just share position data by default, so Instagram and Snapchat and all these, they have functions for that. And then it can just happen that friends or partners, even without really you realizing, they know where you are, and then in arguments suddenly they confront you with, oh, you were there at this specific time, you met this specific person. And lastly, there's unfortunately also through digital means indirect ways where components of apps just share your data, like Threema or WhatsApp, where this is not direct, but you still share location data if you just say, oh, I'm here, and then they can infer on where you are. And then, of course, people also post publicly on social media where they are. That's not a secret. Like I just posted that I'm at WICMP. That's not rocket science, but that can also have consequences. And finally, there's Bluetooth trackers, which we'll look at now. So, Bluetooth tracker. That are these little fun devices that have a very legitimate use case. For example, I put one in my backpack because then I can't lose it. We just had a talk about night trains. I put my Bluetooth tracker on my backpack that is stolen at night. I can find my backpack that was stolen at night. That, you see, is a very legitimate use case. Actually, these are Bluetooth low energy trackers. I just use Bluetooth here equivalently because in the use case that's not really a difference. I put that at my valuables. I even saw people who put that on or inside their bikes so they can find them more easily. You can also track pets. Have to be a bit careful where you put it on the pet, they can get hurt. You can also put it at your wallet, at your key. If you are easily forget things, you can find it again. And current trackers all have a so-called crowdsourcing network, so I can find trackers with devices in their environment that are part of the same network. These are pretty popular, especially since the pandemic and Apple AirTags became a thing in 2021. Okay. So the idea of crowdsourcing networks is, well, the original idea is that I find devices with Bluetooth. And that's not very good because Bluetooth is very restricted in its range, and would be cool if I could find my tracker elsewhere as well. And so I don't just use my own device, but I use all devices in the vicinity that also share their position. So the Bluetooth tracker communicates with its environment, tells the devices in the vicinity, hey, this is where I am, and then they share their position further. And the trackers often say just, hello, here I am, and then that position is shared. So here, use case, for example, a cat. You can also put it in a package. Oh, the LaTeX failed. But in this case, someone lent me Bluetooth trackers for my master's thesis, and they sent them via a package. And I told the person, please put them into your tracking. And we actually found that it was better than the DHL tracking code. Could see where the package currently was. So if you want to send packages to trusted people, ask them if you are allowed to put a tracker in them. It's very cool to do. Even, well, it does have implication because, for example, if the mail company would start doing that, well, they already have that data. But you see the point. Position data can also be used to track performance of employees in this case. But in private, this can be very fun. Popular networks. So, for example, Apple Find My. We already mentioned AirTags. There's many devices that can also be used for digital stalking in this area. Google has the Find My Device network, which is unfortunately not compatible with Apple. That's a bit sad. Google gives a specification of Find My Device that others can implement. And then there's also other networks like Tile and Samsung, but we don't talk about these here. They're not relevant. In general, these devices have an unpaired state, meaning they're not initialized yet. They don't have an owner device, but then they can be connected. Then they have an owner device, but they're not connected yet. They have don't do broadcasts to other devices. That's what we want. Then there's nearby, which is connection to the owner device was lost. So, possibly they start broadcasting first part of their public key, but without reports to the crowdsourced networks. It tries regaining the connection.
Einen gewissen Zufall mit drin zu haben, dass die Geräte an sich nicht direkt getrackt werden können, beziehungsweise quasi reverse verwendet werden kann, damit die statische MAC-Adresse nicht dazu führt, dass ich über Jahre hinweg einen Tracker verfolgen kann und dadurch relativ easy eine Person verfolgen kann.
So lost and separated is when the connection to the owner device is lost for a longer time, so the MAC address rotates every 24 hours.
Apps wie was ich noch vorstellen würde, oder die OS-Detection.
So that tracker apps can find it if it's still near you.
mitreisende und stalkende Tracker finden kann.
And you can find trackers that are traveling along you. So one example is Apple Find My. That's for Apple devices, and it's popular through AirTags. There's Google Find My, and that works similarly. And both networks have a similar reach and similar coverage. And you can opt out on both Android and iOS devices, but you can't use those trackers yourself then. And there are different kinds of trackers for both networks, and they're not compatible. Those are the basics of trackers. I went through them a bit quickly, but I hope it's understandable. Sadly, there's digital violence involved with statistics. So we'll be speaking about the police criminal statistics of 2024. There are relatively many stalking cases, 24,000, and most victims are women, so there's a gender bias involved.
Genau. Es gibt relativ viele Betroffene von digitaler Gewalt und
Beziehungen. Das ist eigentlich relatively many victims.
Und die Idee ist, warum ich diese Statistiken hier überhaupt einblende. Ich wollte
so
zeigen,
the idea of showing these statistics is that I want to show that it's really a problem, but that's not just limited to Bluetooth trackers. Like they're playing a role in it.
Letztlich ist es ein Problem.
But in the end, it's a problem. We have to hurry up a bit.
Letztlich gibt's auch Informationen von Beratungsstellen und Frauenhäusern und Supportinfrastrukturen.
So in the end, there is information available from victim services, and so Bluetooth trackers aren't really the main problem, as I suspected initially. Victims sadly aren't sensibilized towards the topics, and the prevalence of these Bluetooth trackers is pretty low, although I assume that there's a large number of unreported cases. I tested it myself for a bit, and there really is potential for abuse. Of course, the terms of service forbid this, and it's also illegal. Also, there's a standard that tries to prevent this. I tried it in practice, and I'll be skipping through this a bit because I want to get to my most important point. I will be uploading the slides. There is a smartphone app for iOS and Android that can detect trackers. It's called available with different sensitivity levels. So false alarms are possible, and you can classify alarms. And it's pretty satisfying in practice compared to the operating services. It performs a manual scan. And it's pretty good at finding trackers traveling along with you, and you can classify false alarms. So dort is a large standard that exists, which is about developing a protocol that allows us to detect these trackers. And there are 3 different documents about this, and if you're interested in this, you can look at them. It's implemented rather well. It implements end-to-end encryption, MAC address rotation, and anti-stalking mechanisms. Like the trackers should have an alarm that sounds. So it also includes some threat models with victim services, which for users with low technical expertise.
Bei den Angreifenden ist es häufig so,
and from attackers, they're usually abusive partners that manage the users' devices. And the threat model includes that the abuser has a power dynamic where they're more powerful. There are different attacker models. You can hide a tracker alongside someone. The most likely stalking scenario is most important to me, where the victim is a woman who has not been sensibilized towards this, and the abuser is mostly a male who has technical expertise, and in the worst case, he has some IT knowledge, and it can happen. And I want to say you can talk to possible victims about this. So what do I do in case I find this? You should localize it and find it. If possible, disable it and wrap it in aluminium foil as a quick fix. And also location spoofing might work. There are points of contact for digital violence and violence in general. So everything is horrible. It's horrible that we're at a point where we have to talk about this and where we have to talk about how many places abuse this location data. So pay attention to yourself. Take care of yourself. Thanks.